breakfast puppies?
This podcast contains adult language and content and is meant for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening. You are listening to the Glitterbois. Thank you very much.
By listener request, this has actually been requested multiple times. Maybe from the same person. I don't know. Whoever's sending me these emails has requested that we do a deep dive into incorporating magic and psionics into combat. Now, Palladium, attacks per melee. How many of my attacks does my spell use, or do my psionics use? Before we answer that question, I'd like to do a kind of a deep dive into the history of how that works. Before I do that, did either of you have comments or questions?
Did they list a system that they wanted that answer for?
I'm assuming for modern 2005 Rift's Ultimate Edition.
Okay.
Of the Palladium rules.
Does anything else have psionic and magic in it?
Fantasy.
Okay.
Heroes Unlimited.
Doesn't Beyond the Supernatural?
Yeah.
Supernatural.
Nightbane. All of it.
Everything that's not Recon or Robotech, right?
Yeah.
Recon, Robotech, Ninjas, and Super Spies. Those are the ones that don't.
And protocultures could be magic anyway, whatever. Okay.
Have you priced protoculture at the pump lately? I need to talk to my senator.
Okay, is that a funny joke or is that a reference?
It's a funny joke. I thought it was hilarious. Funny. I mean,
no, it's hilarious. I want to know if you came up with that.
I did right just now. Sorry.
That's beautiful.
Okay.
That is absolutely beautiful. Yep. We'll have to talk to Ron Wyden.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the history of how Palladium's initiative rounds or attacks per melee work. Now, we did an episode about 10 or so, I forget, back about AD&D First Edition and its influence on Palladium. Palladium's games really are rooted in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. And, well, I don't know if this is official, but it seems obvious to me that Palladium basically is Kevin's house rules for that game, because there's so many similarities in the way that everything moves, including skill progressions, including some classes are just that class, but more, or that class, but different. There's so much of that inspiration there. In that edition, in First Edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the way that your attacks worked, where you got one action per round, one action. On your turn, you could do a thing. Unless you are a fighter with a weapon specialization. And at levels of weapon specialization, you unlocked additional attacks per melee. Now, I might be conflating the second edition version, but I think the second edition was the same as first edition in that when you specialized after like a few ranks of specialization, the warrior, the fighter, whatever, would get, instead of one attack per round, they would get 3 attacks every 2 rounds. So you get 1 attack first round, 2 attacks the next round, 1 attack the next round, and 2, and so on. But if you were a character like a multi-class character that had a specialization in a sword and also could cast spells, on your turn, you couldn't use your weapon specialization attacks to cast spells. You had to pick the thing that you were doing. On my turn, I do stab. On my turn, I do wiggle fingers or something. It was always, you picked a thing on your turn that you did.
Yes. And this included running, moving, and all the rest of it too.
Yeah, all of that was just included. It was just sort of assumed that you were moving.
Yeah.
So Palladium Fantasy First Edition did the same thing, but doesn't quite come out and explain it. But if you look at the way that all the systems work together, it's pretty clear to me that in Palladium Fantasy First Edition, combat on your turn, you pick the one thing that you're going to do. I'm going to do melee, I'm going to do archery, I'm going to do magic, or I'm going to do psionics. There's no mixing them up. You do one of those things. And then the amount of times that you get to do that thing per round is based upon the relevant ability. If you're going melee, then it's your hand-to-hand combat skill. If you're going archery, it's your rate of fire. If you are a mage, then your magic combat table eventually at some point might give you that treasured second spell per melee. And same with psionics.
I think it should be noted also, isn't the Palladium round significantly longer than the assumed round from D&D?
In first ed, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the first ed was
15 seconds, wasn't it?
10 or 15
Yeah,
seconds.
First edition
it was
Palladium
wild.
Fantasy is 1 minute.
Oh, that's right. Per round. It was 1 freaking minute.
1 minute long
And you
combat
got to do
rounds.
one thing.
One thing.
Yep.
Now, I understand why they did that, because they wanted minute and round to be synonymous with casting time, with spell durations and whatnot. Ever since then, it's been 15 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is still an awful long time.
Yeah, and I think 10 second is the standard D&D round for a while. So yeah, it's like
5.
half a
They cranked it down.
It's
It's
since
5
second
now.
edition, it's been 5.
second ed was 10.
Yeah,
No.
Second ed and its action segments, they were
No, you just got to add free actions to it, but it was 5
somebody
seconds.
who is listening, correct us. One of us is wrong. We're probably all wrong.
Yeah, I thought the 5 second came in on third, but I could be dead wrong on that.
I thought it was been 10 seconds since the dawn of dungeon time. But that's how it was in first edition.
Yeah.
So you did not mix them. You did a thing, and that was what you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rifts and the Megaversal engine come along and change that completely. Whereas in Palladium Fantasy First Edition, you started your character off at level 1 with 1 fucking attack.
Mm-hmm.
In Rifts, in Butts Edition, you start off with a hand-to-hand skill that gives you 2 attacks. And then if you look on page of the Butts Edition, where is it? Here we go. Page 35 of the Butts Edition, under the attack per melee thing. Hopefully you read that rule, because that rule right there says characters with hand-to-hand combat automatically get 2 attacks plus those from your skill.
Yeah.
Seriously, I hope you read that, folks. Well, fortunately for you, they just did the math for you in the Ultimate Edition. And so from that point forward, you've no longer had to add in those 2 points. Okay, now with this edition, we're just using attacks for everything. There's no longer that whole thing on your turn where you pick a thing and you do that. Now there's this action economy of attacks. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. In both editions of Butts and Ultimate Edition, now, instead of on my turn, I do psionics, if you are a psionicist, your ability to do psionics is interchangeable with your ability to punch or shoot a guy.
Mm-hmm.
You no longer have the rate of fire of your modern weapons. I think ranged weapons still might have it, and that's confusing as hell. I don't know how that works. I think that's just an old rule that they forgot to white out that column. But like bows and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, with a gun, you can shoot your gun as many times as you have attacks per melee. So if you are a gunslinging psionicist, you can go pew, wom, 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 pew, wom, 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 in any mix of that you wish.
That was hand-to-hand basic, I believe, that you just did.
Any of them. No, basic, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Right?
basic is the pew.
Yeah.
I think an expert is the pew. And then we get to martial arts, which is the first beer is kicking in. So any questions yet?
No, it's all just dependent on your ISP. How much of that do you carry for your 5 attacks that you can glass cannon your first round?
Yeah. Well, that leads us to one of the first big criticisms that people have of this combat system is, so you're saying if I'm a good boxer, I'm also able to use my psionics faster?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Mental discipline and physical discipline go hand in hand. If you don't believe me, go hit a gym for a year. It does. It just does. I mean,
but why boxing? Of all the things,
Kevin Siembieda likes to punch people, man.
He loves his one-on-one pugilism.
I I would love to see him as that poster. Can we swap the head? Please.
I would.
Please.
I wonder if we could get Siembieda and Uwe bowl the box. Okay.
We'll be taking bets.
Okay. So.
Wow. No, wait. No, we can't walk away. Someone in there. If you know the poster I'm talking about, it's the guy with the pants really high and the mustache, and he's in the classic pugilism pose. Give me that with Kevin Siembieda's face. Go to our Discord, post it in Glitterbois.
I would
make
love
this
to
happen for me.
And then we can put it on a shirt and
Yes.
wear it when we first meet him.
And just say extra attack. I see you forgot about my extra attack. That's what the shirt says.
All right. So now we get to magic. Okay, so just a quick review. Palladium Fantasy 2nd Edition, Rifts, and Beyond the Supernatural 2nd Edition, After the Bomb 2nd Edition, Heroes Unlimited 2nd Edition. All of the current age Palladium games work this way. The number of attacks per melee is directly determined by your hand-to-hand skill, and they are interchangeable with Psionics if you have them. Magic, however, if we're going with Butts Edition, then we're looking at, as Matthew has pointed out to me kindly, page 165.
Yes.
Which talks about magic attacks per melee and how long spells take to cast. It goes up to, let's see.
It's really vague,
Old man
actually.
eyes pull the book out really far here. 2 low-level spells can be cast per melee. The higher level can take more complex, require more time. 1 spell per melee can be cast from 7th through 10th. 1 spell every 2 melees, 11 through 15, and so on. Now, that I like as an old school GM, but as a modern GM who likes simple math, that's confusing. Because it doesn't give you an exact number of attacks. It just says half a round, a whole round, 1 every 2. So what does that mean? Does that mean if I'm casting a level 10 spell, am I spending 2 whole rounds doing nothing but casting that spell?
Yeah.
Or does it mean that the second round I get to finally cast the spell, but I've been doing other things in between? So it never comes out and says it.
It doesn't, but once again, that's a GM call, and
Yeah.
I would say that it's if I was doing it, when you get into that level of spell, you are talking a spell. You are doing nothing.
Yeah. Now, others look at the one that's like at the beginning that says you can cast 2 low-level spells per round. So does that mean that I saw someone on a forum who made a comment saying, well, that means that you're just penalized if you have more attacks. No.
I like his voice. I think that's correct.
It doesn't. It simply is a divide by half. So if you have 2 attacks per round, you can cast 2 magic spells. You can cast 1 magic spell of first level and still have another attack. If you have 4 attacks per round, you can cast 1 magic spell and still have 2 attacks left. Honestly, it's really just a divide by half. I don't see how this is penalizing anybody. Y'all?
I mean, it all comes down to the interpretation. What you say makes sense, but I can also see other arguments for things going a different way on that. It's one of those ones where we're in that unstated area and people can have legitimate disagreements.
Yeah. Well, I like it as an old school GM, and I like it for something like old school Palladium Fantasy 1st Edition. I like this idea. I love this idea, actually. For Rifts, going back to a previous episode where I was talking about converting attacks to action points, this doesn't work.
No.
It really doesn't. Because when you're doing something like action points, you want set values.
Yeah.
You want to know that I have 7 action points and this thing costs X action points to cast. Now, if I get 9 action points, that's not going to adjust the cost of anything that I have, right?
Also doesn't work with things like dodge either, does it?
No,
Yeah.
it really, really fucks with things. So Ultimate Edition improved that, in my opinion, for Rifts. Again, I love the old system. But this works better for Rifts, and that is on page 189 of the RUE talks about how long it takes to cast. And it's so much simpler. 1 attack per melee for low-level spells, 2 attack per melee for mid-level spells, and 3 attacks per melee for high-level spells and spells of legend. It's a nice, simple system.
Does it actually say what counts as a low-level, mid-level, high-level spell?
Yeah. 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and 11 plus.
Got it. Just for the folks listening at home.
Yeah.
Here's where it breaks down, though, because the round is still 15, right?
15 seconds, yeah.
Well, it goes on to say, in parentheses, at the end of each of those, 9 to 10 seconds for 3rd level spell. So that's still 1 round.
I think that those are estimates. Yeah. The idea being that a leyline walker who can cast a level 15 spell,
right?
Unless they have seriously invested in other power sources of direct empowerment, they're not going to have that many attacks per melee.
I suppose the main lesson here is don't get separated from your party or your meat shields or whatever you want to call them, because as you spend your 3 rounds powering up, you don't want some Tyro Schmo to come up and stick a knife in your neck.
This isn't rounds. This is just 3 actions. So if
I have the dumb, and that's how I express myself in public.
We're here for you, Matthew.
Yeah,
We're here for you.
No. This is if you're high level, let's say.
God damn it! Yeah, that's entirely right.
Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
Still, though, you keep those meat shields right where they belong.
Yeah. Now, the main limiter in Rifts now, or pretty much anything after 1st edition Palladium Fantasy, the main limiter, of course, is PPE.
Mm-hmm.
There's no limit to how much PPE you can spend in an action. It's simply limited by your reserve and what you're trying to do.
As long as I've been soliciting work from our audience, I want to hear a song about the differences between PPE, ISP, and Chi, because I think that would make a very effective geek rap.
I do. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. That gives me a Fritos, Doritos, Cheetos feel to it. Yeah. Tostitos.
Yeah.
Sentitos. Yeah.
I am so sorry. My real skill is disruption. I don't know if you,
Well, you are an agent of chaos.
I know.
I think right now, though, you are a prime example of why this question gets asked and sent in by multiple people. Mm-hmm. That the terminology can be confusing. The phrasing can be confusing. As you just pointed out, 9 to 10 seconds in parentheses next to 3 attacks per melee. But again, okay, well, we haven't even talked about other sources of attacks per melee, such as robot power armor combat. If you have an elite set of power armor combat skills, you get more attacks per melee. Okay, what about I'm piloting a robot that gives me additional attacks per melee? So, like the fucking Glitterbois. So you have, let's say you've worked yourself up to with
a boxing
your robot.
Glitterbois.
You're a boxer. You have martial arts. You are an elite Glitterbois pilot. You get an extra attack per melee for Glitterbois. Let's say you get yourself up to where you're doing like 12 attacks per round. And you're also a psionicist? What do we do now? Well, guess what? In my game, congratulations, you have 12 psionic attacks per round because I don't fucking feel like doing the math of separating them.
I suppose, is there any kind of mechanic that tells what happens once? Is there a price to pay for exhausting that energy? Because in some of the systems there are, and I've never played a magic user.
I mean, the price that you pay in exhausting your power, it is its own price. Like, exhausting your power for someone who relies on that power is it's terrible.
You're just running out of ammo and a gun.
One thing I like about ninjas and super spies using Chi is that there's a physical price to pay for running out.
Yep.
And I think that's something that you should house rule in that.
Well, I think there are actual classes in later books and rifters and modules that have that in it already. That either when you run out of power, you go into like an end state, but also have the option of tapping into other reserves of power, such as
Blood magics.
yeah, blood magic, man. Blood magic. I love it.
Have you ever tried it? I mean, the first taste is free, but after that, you have to pay.
This place is free, man. Yeah. I got some knives on the shelf over there.
This has been your usual. This has been your regularly scheduled as technology recruiting ad.
That's a deep cut.
I think from a storytelling technique, there should be prices to pay for great power. There always should be.
You would really like long-term play and dungeon crawl classics.
I do.
Because magicians and that, they pay some heinous long-term prices for that power.
I love...
I'd also be welcome in one of my Delta Green games with that attitude.
I get it from reading Mercedes Lackey back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of, what she does to other humans.
Wait, Mercedes Lackey? Are you thinking of Mercedes Lackey or are you thinking of Marion Zimmer Bradley?
I am thinking of Mercedes Lackey, the last Herald Mage, Vonyl.
No, okay. I'm just like, you're talking about what they do to other people. Because I never heard anything bad about Mercedes, but I've heard all kind of terrible things about
This is
Bradley.
third place removed, so I'm not even gonna.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But going in the same vein as Mercedes Lackey, Ursula K. Le Guin.
Oh my God. I am right now for the first time reading Wizard of Earthsea.
Oh, yeah.
I am like one chapter.
I'm so happy for you.
I am in the last chapter and I love it.
Yeah.
It is just such a wonderful story. There are consequences to actions. I love a good story about a character that changes, learns, evolves, and by the end of even a chapter of their life, they are no longer the same person that they were at the beginning of that chapter.
Also read The Last Herald Mage by Mercedes Lackey. To me, in my mind, that is always what a wizard is. That is a magical user.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way it's set up. And it works here with ley lines and the drawing on the pools of power. And you can use blood magics to raise the power too.
Since we're going into it in our favorite wizards, while the rest of the series I think is mediocre at best, the first two books of the Kelowon, was that it? Raymond Feist's story, Magician Apprentice and Magician Master of Pug the Wizard.
Oh. Yes.
The way he learns magic and the costs and whatnot, but it also has one of my favorite moments of all time wizardry in the second book. And essentially it's one of those I've had enough of this shit moments where he just goes, no, and shit happens. And it's,
is that the
beautiful.
I've been nice up to now speech?
It's been so long since I remember. All I remember is there was a big arena, a whole lot of slaves were being killed. And essentially he's like, I have lived my life up to this point thinking all of this is okay and ignoring it, but I can't do that anymore. No, it's just, it is a beautiful moment.
I feel like I did this, and I'm sorry I did this again. But Louise Cooper should also be put in this list. The Time Master trilogy is also a good. So that's your required reading to play any kind of mage or psionicist.
I think, okay, bringing this back to Palladium rules, I believe that the PPE system is actually pretty ahead of its time. And I think that you are suggesting adding in a rule that might not be necessary because most of the high level spells cost more PPE than a normal magician has at personal access. And the rules have built into them questionable methods of acquiring that PPE.
That's true.
And those methods themselves have sometimes simply a moral cost, maybe a financial cost, and oftentimes an epic game-changing cost.
Yeah.
When you only have 700 PPE and you want to cast a spell that requires 6,000, you got to figure something out. And unless you take a really long time to figure that thing out, the outcome is probably not going to be on the up and up.
Yeah. Sorry, the rap was going off in my head. It's actually done to the tune of You Down with OPP?
Oh, God.
You down with PPP?
Yeah.
PPE?
No, no ISP.
You know, I think I've rapped that to my cat before. You down with PP?
You see,
That
it's just
explains so much about your cat now. Gonna have to go give the cat a hug.
Yeah. Okay, that's in a nutshell how magic and psionics incorporate into combat. Just focusing on the cost in the action economy of the Palladium combat system. What we haven't even touched upon, however, we did briefly hint at it, is Kevin Siembieda's whole obsession with one-on-one fighting. The boxing template is how the Palladium combat system is presented in the core rules. And if you sit and take the time to read through all of his whole squaring off speech, your understanding of how combat works in a tabletop RPG is going to be changed, because as it's written, it doesn't follow it's your turn. What do you do? I spend this attack to do this attack to this, and this attack to do this. No, it's I attack. Okay, well, they counter attack. Okay, now then whatever. So how does magic work with that? That's ultimately your call.
It honestly depends on the foe too.
Yeah.
Like if you're attacking a peasant, you get your stuff off and maybe he throws a pitchfork at you. But if this is another psionicist or a magic user of some kind or another, you could play it the exact same way. And that would be the advantage of going back to action points one after another, after another, after another.
So it ultimately depends upon, I think, the group's understanding of how combat's supposed to work and how the GM wants their game to flow. I run Rifts and Palladium for newcomers to the system. People who have experience playing in other games, and by other games, I mean 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I bring a lot of those people to my table to play to play Palladium. I have to adapt things so that it works better for their expectations of how play works. And that means I adapt attacks per melee to action points, and I assign everything a cost, and all of that happens on your turn. Move on. Yeah.
Interesting subnote, as I read, and in light of this question, which I've honestly never considered before, is that it says right here in Butts on 113 about psionics. Psionic attacks which assail the mind, emotions, or physiology of a person can be fought off with one's own will and mental endurance. Now, physiology would say the body, the matter, the force, the meats.
Yep.
And I honestly, I know it makes a game more crunchy, but I like damage to be more than, oh no, we're getting close to 0. And so when it says it assails the physiology, I would like to see a table that's like, oh, well, all the training and the extra attack I got from also taking boxing, because at this point, who wouldn't take boxing, right?
Yeah, if you can take boxing, you take boxing.
Unfortunately, our poor mystic. Yep.
I would like to see a degradation table based on that. And I understand that's more numbers to keep track of.
Yeah.
But it does make sense, and it builds that sense of desperation as the fight drags on. And, having been in several, more than 20, that's a real thing. Like you get punch drunk, you get dumb. I mean,
you like the crunch, and by crunch I mean punch crunch.
Can I interest you in a game of Phoenix Command, sir?
I've never played it, so yeah.
It was designed by aerospace engineers. Just saying.
Oh Lord.
I have Cyborg Commando, not Cyborg Commando. Living Steel.
On the NAS?
No, I have Living Steel.
Oh, the simplified version of Phoenix.
Phoenix Command isn't a role-playing game. It's a strategy game. Cyborg Commando, I think, was the first game that Gary Gygax made, and it's terrible.
Meters and yards are interchangeable on a 1-to-1 basis.
Well, Living Steel.
Living Steel.
Okay.
It's fucking terrible.
And with that, ringing endorsement, I hope this answered your question. Do you have the question? I want to make sure we answered it.
The question was presented in a few different emails and texts and comments that we received that more or less amounted to, how does magic and psionics work with the attack system? With magic, you are, we'll do another episode later on the usefulness of magic and rifts, because it's questionable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.
That was Attacks Per Melee. Join us online. Please drop by our Discord and tell us how we screwed it all up. Tell us your house rules. How do you manage your magicians and your psionicists in combat? How do you manage the specific situation of a Glitterbois psionicist in his armor using
Boxing.
magic, using only physical psionics? How does that work? Let me know what you do for that, and we'll catch you next time.
Starships, magic, mystic martial arts, romance. All of these can be found in A Cloak of Blades by Isaac Scher. You might have heard my name before. I've done a lot of voiceover work for Breakfast Puppies, and I've recently released my first novel. It's available on Amazon as an ebook and paperback, and you can get it for free if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. I do hope you'll support my work as you're supporting Breakfast Puppies, and it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Have a good one.
You've been listening to The Glitterbois, a Palladium Books fan podcast. Glitterbois, Rifts, the Megaverse, and all other such topics are the property of Kevin Siembieda and Palladium Books. Please buy all their stuff and help keep them in print and making more games. You can order directly at palladiumbooks.com, and their entire catalog is available digitally at Drive-Thru RPG as well. Our opening music is 8-Bit Bass and Lead by Furby Guy from freesound.org. This closing music is Caravana by Philip Gross, available at freemusicarchive.org. All sound effects used are self-made or acquired via Creative Commons Zero license. If you like what you have heard, find us on Twitter and Facebook as The Glitterbois. That's BOIS. And check us out online at breakfastpuppies.com/glitterbois. And also join us on the Breakfast Puppies Network Discord at breakfastpuppies.com/discord. And if you want to help us out, please spread the word and help us build a community. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time.